will invoke with Sanskrit prayers, invocations, peace chants. Allow the vibrations to relax you mentally, feeling how the vibrations calm you and bring you closer to your spiritual center. Two more, slightly higher pitch. In the lowest pitch. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Trayambakam Yajamahe, Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam, Urvarukamiva Bhagnanan, Mrityunmukshya Mamritat. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste. So, satsang on the sacred and auspicious occasion of Diwali. Many forces, many shaktis. Shakti is a cosmic force found all throughout the universe. And many shaktis conspired for you to be here right now. You could have been anywhere else tonight, today. But you have found yourself in the company of truth, and you have found yourself in the company of truth seekers, and one who gives satsang does not do it for himself or herself. They do it for you. This is all for you. All the masters, you're surrounded by them. The darshan of all the masters, sages and saints since time immemorial, since before recorded history, have obtained their lucid wisdom through this art you are participating in right now. This very way is how the mind approaches the divine, approaches the spiritual life, and begins to fully absorb it, so that no aspect of our life remains unillumined. Today is about the illumination. Taking light for your heart, light for your mind, light for your whole soul, your whole being. So, satsang is the gathering. You see, the yoga practice, the yoga tradition, the yoga lifestyle, the yoga teachings and the learnings, all techniques and methods and philosophies, if you can call them that. They all gather in satsanga. You learn the art and the science of applying the vast tradition of yoga, the largest body of literature in the world, the most complex, the most exhaustively and concisively leading one from ignorance to knowledge. In full completeness, in full richness is the yoga scripture are the yoga scriptures, the shastras. Leading one from ignorance to knowledge, that's called asatoma satgamaya. Leading one from darkness to light, tamasoma jyotirgamaya. And leading one from death to immortality, mrityurma amritam gamaya. So this asatoma satgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityurma amritam gamaya summarizes all prayers from all spiritual practices and from all religions. So, to practice yoga is to discover the very secrets with which your own religion is trying to teach you. Embedded in, encoded in every religion and every scripture is truth. But it requires many things: purified intellect, purified heart, purified mind, and the leading by a qualified teacher. Both the most farthest from your current understanding and nearer than the nearest, dearer than the dearest. Because what we learn in satsang and what we listen to in satsang, what we meditate upon in satsang, what we reason with, what we understand, is about you. All of the scriptures, all of the Vedas, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of verses, shlokas, in the Vedas, all deal with one subject. You say, oh, there's 4 Vedas. Why are there 4 subjects? There's 4 subjects within the Vedas. They're all about you. A grand orchestra playing the divine melody leading to realizing who you are, self-realization. So maybe you didn't know it. Maybe you received this invitation to attend satsanga, but the entire Shakti, entire cosmic forces and cosmic energies have brought you here today to find out, who am I? Number one, who am I is the first and the central question of all of the yoga practice, is to self-realize. Number 2, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Okay, but this presupposes you have answered the first question correctly. Because if the first question's answer is, I am the body, I am the ego, then you will find an egoistic purpose and a very limited purpose. And it won't, spoiler alert, it won't give you full happiness. It won't give you absolute lasting satisfaction, perfect fulfillment. It will not, if it's born from the ego. So the first question, who am I? You are the Atman. You are the Atman. Atman means self. You can relax. I thought it was going to be way more complex than self. It's the self. Self with a capital S means who you really are, not the body, mind, ego complex self. So that Atman is who you truly are, is your essential reality. Okay? Your essential reality. Next question, what is my purpose? We know that we will be misled by the veil of ignorance born, and ego is born from ignorance. You said, how is there an ego? Why is the ego such a hindrance? And why is the ego such an obstacle for us to overcome in the spiritual practice? It's because the ego veils the Atman. The ego covers who you truly are. It is like a superimposition. onto reality, which is the Atman, the self. Okay? So then now you understand who you truly are, and you have now come into embodiment as an embodied Atman, which that terminology is Jiva. An embodied Atman, an Atman that identifies with a body and a mind and a world and experiences, is known as a Jiva, the soul. And for the soul who is embodied, who is essentially the Atman, but has forgotten it, or has become ignorant of oneself, who one is, essentially, what would be the purpose? The purpose is to realize myself, right? To realize who I am. That's the purpose. Number 2 question answered. Rapid fire round. Number 3 question is, what is my goal? So if I've answered 1 and 2 correctly, 1, who am I? I'm the Atman. 2, what is my purpose as an embodied soul? Is to practice yoga for self-realization. Any movement towards self-realization, yoga being the most direct. And number 3 question, what is my goal? And the goal is the same for every soul. The goal for every soul is enlightenment. And all of Diwali is to guide the minds of the masses to this. 3 questions. The most essential and profound questions to ask and answer in your life. And so Diwali, all of the festivities and this kind of thing, they attract the masses to participate in something that leads them higher and higher to higher and higher states of consciousness, more and more elevated thoughts. You see Lord Shiva surrounded by Himalayas. Himalayas represent elevated thoughts, lofty thoughts, purified intellect. And when the intellect becomes purified, what happens is it is rendered intuitive. So now the practices fall away, the austerities fall away, all of the physical disciplines are no longer needed when you have the intuitive knowledge of who I am. Intuitive knowledge of your true self. And so we've said it very quickly, but this is not an ordinary task. Oh, just realize myself. Should be pretty simple. Raise your hand if you want to suffer. Crickets. So we all want to be happy, yet when we suffer sorrow, misery, grief, delusion, pride, jealousy, anger, lust, greed, we can continue, but we won't. And we suffer because we have not realized who we are. Because in that self, the Atman, what is its nature? What is the nature of that I or that Atman, that self? It's called Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda. One word. And that's another name for the Atman. It's the definition of your nature, which is Sat. You hear that same word in Satsang. Gathering of truth, gathering of, this is truth. Sat, truth. Truth of what? Truth of there being existence. Always. Not the existence of something, but existence itself. Not the truth of something, but truth itself. That's Sat. Chit is pure consciousness. Not the consciousness of an object. I'm aware of my body. I'm aware of this room. It's not the awareness of something, it's awareness itself. Pure awareness, pure consciousness. And Ananda. Last aspect of your nature. Ananda is bliss. Bliss, absolute. So any other experience other than Sat Chit Ananda has been derived from ignorance. Once more, any other experience other than absolute existence, meaning that you, the real you, is not born and thus does not die. You are eternal. That is the nature of the self. So the body has a beginning and an end, but the Atman is beginningless and endless. So to feel that I exist and then I somehow don't exist is born of ignorance. And to fear the death of the body is also an offshoot of ignorance. Because one would be identified with one's body and then fear losing it. But have not realized that you are the Atman, not the body. When we continue experiencing waves, thought waves, vrittis, and these can be painful vrittis and not painful vrittis. When they're called painful vrittis, they come from klesha, they cause affliction. So when you have these thought waves, and they're born from ignorance, the first klesha, ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and fear, those thought waves cause further bondage and further misery and further suffering. But when you discover the art of yoga, science of yoga, you have now the tool and the key and the power to choose which thought waves you would like to have, what kind of desires will give rise to those thought waves, and what kind of actions you will engage in to receive the object of your desire. And you can make further enmeshing in the world process the object of your desire. Eat, drink, be merry, do it all again. Eat, drink, be merry, do it all again. Or you can make self-realization the object of your aspiration. Selecting the words carefully. Desire leads to further desires. Like pouring ghee on a fire only makes it come burning brighter and brighter. Your desires are like pouring oil onto a fire. They flare up and you become more desirous. So please hold the questions till the end. We'll have question and answer afterwards. So leading you to have purified desires. You learn how I have made the error in the past, to then reap, and then from those impure desires and distractions, we do not reach the goal, and we do not realize who we are, our Sat Chit Ananda nature, our existence, consciousness, bliss, our true nature. So in meditation, you're led from object of consciousness, whether it be a form, a yantra, whether it be a sound, a mantra, or any object of concentration, you're led from that form and that object to the nameless and formless consciousness that is aware of all objects. Meditation, you have an object of meditation. You let the mind rest on that object of meditation. This starts as there is a meditator, there is the object of meditation, and then there is the experience of meditating. And when you reach the goal of meditation, all become one. The meditator, the object of meditation, and the experience of meditating dissolve. Dissolve into what? Nothingness? No, into pure consciousness. The beginningless and endless, pure consciousness, which was always there, by the way, before you started meditating. And after you're done meditating, I'm very meditative, I am the consciousness, I am pure awareness, and then I'm done meditating, it's time for wine and cheese. Where did the consciousness go? You are still that consciousness. It doesn't start and it doesn't end. Okay? Sat Chit, Ananda, bliss. If any part of your life experience is not enfolded and enraptured in bliss, we have still yet forward to march in our journey to self-realization. Bliss, absolute. And if you've ever heard about samadhi, samadhi is in Raja Yoga the eight of eight steps, the last step, the final step in the goal of Raja Yoga, the scientific movement of yoga. Samadhi. And samadhi means to be super conscious, means conscious of yourself. Doesn't have to be all dramatic and a bunch of hype. Super consciousness, I have to levitate. No. You are fully absorbed. Samadhi means evenly and fully absorbed in the self, in truth. And when you are fully absorbed in that truth of self-realization, of yoga, you attain the state of bliss, which is not dependent on objects. Happiness or bliss that is not dependent on objects. Now you are moving in the correct direction toward ananda, toward bliss. In those states of samadhi, one laughs, his heart full of laughter, because one is realizing at one single instant how many lives we have neglected the truth which is ever present right now. So that self, your true nature, your essence, is shining, a light that is ever shining. And merging with that light in samadhi, one realizes the ignorance one was under to think that I was this ego, body, mind, personality. And to cling to it. Remember, lifetime after lifetime, countless lifetimes, innumerable lifetimes, we've done the same thing. We've clung to this ego mind, ego body mind, name, right? Name, form, and function. And that's me. And this is where I'm from, and these are all the strings attached to it. These are all the chains that I wear, aka karma. These are my karmic chains. People insist on being the body. But the body is constantly changing. But you are unchanging. How many lives, many bodies have been there. Many families have been there. All of us have been. Mothers, sisters, brothers, cousins, aunties, uncles, and nieces. We've been them all. So which one are you really? Why get so attached and caught up with one, which comes with all of its entanglements? And so when you decide to free yourself from these entanglements, now yoga calls you a spiritual practitioner. Now you are called a spiritual aspirant. When you have developed that aspiration, remember your desires for all the objects of the world and all the pleasures of the world have been purified into an aspiration for one thing and one thing only, and that's self-realization. That's true happiness. And when you make that choice, you become a spiritual aspirant. And profound students are met by profound teachers. Acknowledging yourself once more for showing up to yourself, which is the most urgent and the most important task to accomplish, which is your goal for every soul, self-realization. And in this movement, light plays a central role, plays the central role. Guru brings light to the cave, the darkest caves of our hearts. These caves which have been unillumined for lifetimes, millions of lifetimes. And in one instant, the Guru comes and brings light and shines and illuminates all the cave. And it didn't matter how long the cave was dark for. And it didn't matter how dark the cave was. All is illumined by the light of spiritual illumination, the light of spiritual knowledge. And there have been countless sages and saints who are coming forward with this light, marching forward as spiritual heroes and leaders for humanity. These are the true ones who are guiding humanity in the proper direction, ones who carry this light of spiritual illumination, who disseminate their knowledgeable and wisdom unselfishly for humanity, for the end of all suffering. The prayer is always for your enlightenment and the enlightenment of the whole world. Many sages and many saints have come forth, fully illumined, and have drawn out teachings from the depths of the yoga scriptures and put it in a scripture this big, something very manageable. The Aparokshanubhuti. Aparokshanubhuti is a scripture written by Sri Sankaracharya. Sri Sankaracharya is the forefather of Advaita Vedanta. Okay, here comes all the Sanskrit now. Back it up a second. Advaita Vedanta. Advaita. Dvaita means two. And means not. So Advaita means not two. Means one. Oneness. This is all about that light that self, they're not being two. They're not being multiple of it. There's one. So I thought it was like a soul, a soul, a soul, a soul, a soul, a soul, a soul. And then these are all lights. In beginning understanding, correct. Advanced understanding, all of these individual souls are the supreme soul, the light of all lights, the Atman. And the realization of this Atman is non-dual, is Advaita, not two, one. One, we are all one. I see different bodies. I see different objects in the world. Vedanta and yoga is pointing at your essential reality. It's not denying that you experience names, forms, and activities, because this is names, forms, and activities is a practical reality in the practical level, in this earth plane, physical reality. Names, forms, and activities will be there. But the enlightened sage, the illumined spiritual aspirant, sees the unity amongst all of that diversity, sees that inner light of Sat Chit Ananda, inner Atman, shining from within every heart, from every mind, in every body, in the entire universe, pervading, all-pervading light. That's what the illumined mind, that's how the illumined mind thinks and how their eyes see. Unity amongst all diversity. And so Shankaracharya, Sri Shankaracharya has, when you have a wet sponge and you wring it out, you take all the Vedas and you wring out that which deals with non-duality, primarily and singularly non-duality, the truth of oneness. If you wring it out, all the Vedas, you get Advaita Vedanta of the Aparokshanubhuti. Aparokshanubhuti is the name of the scripture, and it means not indirect realization. Aparokshanubhuti means not indirect realization. Remember, if we put means not, so paroksha means indirect knowledge, indirect realization, and aparoksha means not indirect, aka direct. So the scriptures, the yoga shastras, they will lead you in scriptures that you want to listen. And let this listening, these scriptures, these shlokas, go from your ears into your heart and soul. Ears, mind, heart, soul. That's deep listening. They will also lead you, scripture, shastras will lead you in meditation. Scripture will make an affirmation. The sutra will be an affirmation. So this is something for you to meditate upon. There will be other scriptures for argumentation, for reflection, for understanding, for explanation. And then there is the Aparokshanubhuti. And the Aparokshanubhuti is about one thing and one thing only, and that is realization. It's about realizing it. So this is, when we are going through the Aparokshanubhuti shlokas, you want to be listening keenly, letting go from ears to the heart, understand it, hold it with you. Make sure you get it. Make sure you understand, not just believe. Make sure you grasp it clearly and confidently, so that you can explain what the teacher has said to someone else in your own words. Meditate. Be still. And realize. Realize is automatic. Realize happens spontaneously when you've done the first three. Listening, reflection, meditation, realization. And this scripture is all about realization. Om Shri Gurave Namah. Om Shri Gurave Namah. Om Shri Gurave Namah. On the sacred occasion of Diwali, light after light after light after light. What is the truth of all of the reflected suns? You have many jars of water and the sun. And the sun, when it shines into the jar of water, produces a reflected sun in each jar of water. What is the truth of each reflected sun? That's right, it's the sun. These reflected suns are not realities in themselves. This must be 100% clear. All of those reflected suns, countless illuminations of the sun, are all essentially and truly the sun. And that is how each reflected sun realizes, I am the sun. I am pure consciousness. I am bliss absolute. I am not the body, mind, intellect, senses, ego. So with our Guru Dev's blessings, His Holiness Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda, and with our Param Guru's blessings, His Holiness Sri Swami Shivananda Saraswati, and with Advaita Guru's blessings, Sri Sankaracharya, we commence in the Aparokshanubhuti in Shloka 65. 144 shlokas, verses in this scripture only. 144. And what do they deal with? Realization of the self. Direct realization of the self. Number 65. People perform all their actions in and through Brahman, another name for Atman, absolute reality. People perform all their actions in and through Brahman, but on account of ignorance, they are not aware of that. Just as through ignorance, persons do not know that jars and other earthenware are nothing but earth. Just as through ignorance, persons do not know that jars and other earthenware are nothing but earth. Remember, names, forms, activities. This is vision born of ignorance. Sudarshan, true vision, is being able to perceive that which is nameless and formless. The Atman, the Brahman, is nameless and formless. So long as we are confused and deluded by the cosmic illusion of names and forms and activities, we think that there is something different called earthenware or a jar, and we think there's something different called earth. Clay. Okay, so clay pots. Imagine clay pot. And In ignorance, we think that there is something, two things. Remember, Dvaita, duality? We think in ignorance that there's two things, that there's a jar and there's clay. But if you ask me, what is the essential nature? What is the truth of that jar? It is clay. It is nothing but clay, earth. So you may have small jars, you may have large jars, you may have thin jars, you may have fat jars. The essential nature of all of them, the essential reality is clay. Just as you may have different bodies, size and shapes and colors, smells sometimes. And the essential nature is the self, the Brahman, in and through all bodies. Just as clay is the essential reality, all-pervading, beginningless and endless reality of each jar. The shape may change. You can break the jar down, and what remains? Again, clay. You started with a pile of clay, you make jar, and you break jar, clay. Clay in the beginning, clay in the middle, clay in the end. Earth, self, Atman, beginningless and endless. 66. Just as there ever exists the relation of cause and effect between earth and a jar, so does the same relation exist between Brahman, the Atman, and the phenomenal world. This has been established here. Now Shankaracharya, in this section of the Aparokshanubhuti, is going to start citing all the yoga scriptures. This is why I selected this part of the Aparokshanubhuti, because you're getting all the scriptures in this focused study. All the Upanishads, he just goes through Upanishad by Upanishad, giving example by example of how you are the self and not the body, and how you are the one indivisible self. Not all these parts. I got a shin, I got a knee, I got a thigh, many, many parts of me. Nope, you are not the body. That's parts of the body. You cannot split the Atman into parts. The I, remember? Follow that I. Say, I am so and so. Talk about the body, you can split it up into parts. But if you, from the perspective of the I, you cannot split it up into parts. It is one awareness. Do you have two awarenesses? No, it's one consciousness. So the relation is that from that consciousness, this whole entire phenomenal universe appears. Say, okay, now we're getting metaphysical. Now we're getting philosophical. No, practical, right now. In your experience right now, ground this for your practical experience in life right now. Are you aware of this room, this ashram, and all the bodies inside of it? Yes. Hopefully you're awake right now. Sometimes we fall asleep in satsang. It's okay because you become very relaxed. You become so subconsciously, unconsciously relaxed. Your soul feels very comfortable. You are aware of this ashram. You're aware of this external world. Okay? So the external world is in your consciousness. Is it outside? It appears that way. Just as many jars appear different, but essentially they are clay, they are earth. So all of this external world and all of the objects, where are they appearing? They're appearing in your awareness, in your consciousness. This must be clear. Easy. Okay, I'm aware of them. But how about this? Are you aware of this? Yes, you are aware of this. So object of consciousness and consciousness are never the same. So the I, the Atman, the Brahman, the self, is consciousness, and that self, the real you, is aware of your own body. And then go further. Aware of your own thoughts. So you are aware of your own mind, your own intellect, your own memory. If you are aware and conscious of your own thoughts, desires, feelings, memories, you are not your mind. Consciousness is something different. You are something different than your own mind. And so that mind shows up where? In your awareness, in your consciousness. Thus, just as there ever exists the relation of cause and effect between earth and a jar, so does the same relation exist between Brahman, consciousness, and the phenomenal world, that which you are conscious of. You are the source of that which you are perceiving in this world. It all starts with you. This has been established in verse 66. 67. Just as the consciousness of earth forces itself upon our mind while thinking of a jar, so also does the idea of ever-shining Brahman flash on us while contemplating the phenomenal world. And this we spoke about earlier as samadhi. You start to meditate upon the illusoriness of all these objects, right? All these objects, body, mind, ego, all personalities, all everything. You contemplate on the momentariness, the transientness of them. You contemplate on the emptiness of them. And you contemplate on the pain we receive from being confused about where we get happiness from. Because like no one signed up for suffering. Remember I asked you, raise your hand if you want to suffer? No one raised their hand, but why do we still suffer? So, while contemplating the nature of this phenomenal universe, this phenomenal world, it flashes on you. There's something that doesn't change. There is something that is changeless amongst all the changes. There is something that is aware, permanent, an eternal reality. That is the very substratum and the very basis of this universe being created, preserved, and dissolved. There's a substratum. And when you're in meditation, when you're in contemplation, this flashes on you like samadhi. This is what is pointing to you in 67. Deep meditation. This is about dharana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, the last three limbs of Raja Yoga. The study and mastery of your mind, Raja Yoga. 68. Atman, though ever pure to a wise man, always appears to be impure to the ignorant, just as a rope always appears in two different ways to a knowing person and an ignorant one. Shankaracharya's snake and the rope. Imagine room is dark, Lights are off, rope is on the ground. In the darkness, you perceive a snake. And you get frightened by the snake. And you jump, and everyone else gets frightened, and they jump. And freaking out goes on until the guru comes and flips on the light. Nothing to worry about, my dears. Relax. It is just a rope. And so that Atman is always pure and is always known to be pure by the wise. Cannot be tainted. Did the snake affect the rope? No, right? Because it was an illusion. It wasn't existing. It wasn't there. It was false. So the snake didn't affect the rope. So the wise understand the Atman to be taintless, unattached, unaffected, beyond asanga, not attached. While the ignorant think that the Atman gets involved with all that it is conscious of and all that it is aware of. In the Bhagavad Gita, central scripture of yoga, the shloka is, the Atman cannot be burnt by any fire, cannot be dried by any wind, cannot be pierced by any sword, or cannot be moistened by any water. That is who you are. So what is there to fear? Nothing is there to fear. 69. Just as a jar is all earth, so also is the body all consciousness. The division, therefore, into self and not self is made by the ignorant to no purpose. First, this is advanced understanding. This is an advanced scripture. Advanced understanding. Usually this scripture is taught to the highest disciple of the Guru, because it's all about realization. And one has to have purified through a lot of austerity and a lot of discipline, mentally and physically, in order to make the mind receptive to these teachings and to this wisdom. So, just as the body is all consciousness, the division into self and not self is made by the ignorant. The first level is to see what is self and not self. So this is saying don't stay there. First stage, you have to have viveka, the discriminative knowledge, viveka. Discriminative knowledge between what is real and what is unreal, what is self and what is not self. This 69 is saying don't stop there. Because what did that leave us with? Duality. That left us with a self and a not self. A spirit and matter. And remember, this yoga is about union, uniting the two. So not to stay there means to then bring that not self in, it dissolves into the self. Where did the snake go? There was two, I thought. There was a snake and a rope, was there? Oh, that was the first stage. The advanced level is to realize that there was never a snake in the first place. And there are not two realities, but there's one reality. And it's ever present, it's ever conscious, and it's ever blissful. When you have that viveka, that discriminative knowledge, now you get passionate. Now you get passionate that I'm going to realize that Atman, and I'm going to have self-realization. I'm going to utilize this gift, this blessing of human embodiment, having a strong body, having a keen intellect, right? I'm going to utilize this incredibly auspicious, momentous occasion of human embodiment. Shall realize the purpose of this embodiment. And so on. That's called vairagya. That's called passion for the real, dispassion for the unreal. 70. Just as a rope is imagined to be a snake, and the Atman is determined to be the body by the ignorant. We went over that again. The rope, the self, the Atman, is seen as what the mind superimposes on it. An ignorant mind, as 70 says, will show you a snake, or will show you a garland, a tossed away mala or garland, or will show you a crack in the ground, or numerous other worldviews that the ignorant mind will project. But all of that has no basis in reality when the light comes on. And when the light comes on, you realize all of your suffering, all of your misery, and all of the sorrow did not need to be there in the first place. It was coming from ignorance, coming from egoism, attachment, aversion, and fear, the kleshas. So we are now free. This is about your being free and about enlightenment. Enlightenment, light to your intellect, light to your heart, light to your mind, light to your soul. You can shine brighter and brighter, more and more joyously, radiantly, when you remove the veils to the light. And all of those veils, like the snake, like the garland, like the crack, are covering the light. And so through purification, through yoga sadhana, this is where yoga sadhana becomes your tool, your toolbox, your treasure chest. The most valuable treasure in the entire universe, yoga. Why? Because it frees you from suffering and leads you to knowledge, to light, and to immortality. To the end of all pain. Pain comes from the misperceptions of a snake, of the garland, of the crack. Knowledge, satisfaction, fulfillment, peace, health, and happiness come from realizing you are the Atman. Snake in the rope, Shankaracharya, snake in the rope. 71, just as earth is thought of as a jar, and as threads are thought of as a cloth, so is the Atman. Cloth, what is the reality of the cloth? Thread. And so cloth can have different patterns, all this diversity, all this multiplicity. Imagine the whole fabric of the universe as a cloth. But what is the cloth made of? What is the essential nature of the cloth, no matter what pattern it is, if it's black, brown, or any shade? It's thread. Thread. Thread is the reality of all of the patterns in all of the cloths. It's thread. One thing is there. Thread. Just as gold is thought of as an earring and water as waves, so is the Atman. So these are all these quotes from the Upanishads coming. Just as gold is thought of as an earring and water as waves, so is the Atman. 72. You have gold, you melt the gold, and you make a ring. Where's the gold gone? Has the gold disappeared? No. The name changed, the form changed, and the activity changed. But did gold change? So is the Atman. So is the self. You melt that down and make a bangle, bracelet. Can you separate the gold from the bracelet? Advaita. Can you separate gold from the ring? So what did we realize? That gold is responsible for all of the names, forms, and activities. All rings, all necklaces, all bangles. All of the names and forms, changing names and forms, owe all of their existence to gold. Even so, all bodies, minds, and souls owe their existence to the Atman, the Self, Brahman. And so on and so on. The Aparokshanubhuti continues, giving you analogy after analogy, example after example, while you meditate and while you hear, just as the stump of a tree is mistaken for a human figure in darkness, dark forest, wandering through this forest of the world process, and we perceive there to be another. We perceive there to be another, and there is not an other. It is the one self. Just as we misperceive in the desert where there is no water, we misperceive a mirage. We get deluded by the veil of ignorance, by the projections of this world process. Remember the sun in the sky shining into the jar of water? And there's a little sun in each jar of water. If the water is shaking, can you see the sun clearly? Even your own reflected self, your own soul. This is now the soul from the ego's point of view, the embodied soul, the body-mind trapped soul. It's trapped in the jar, right? It's trapped in the water. To realize you are the sun, first it's going to take, number one, clean water. Clean water. So proper exercise, proper diet, proper breathing, proper relaxation, and positive thinking. Clean up the water. Number two, steady the water. Steady the water. Control the water. Because if the water is not controlled, and if it's shaky, and there's so many waves in the jar, the bucket of water, then even if it's clean water, you will not see. Water must be clean and controlled. And finally, so this is our review of the Kriya Shakti. That Shakti, that cosmic energy, is channelized in Kriya Shakti by your Manipura chakra as your actions. So we clean up the water by purifying our actions through karma yoga, the yoga of action, yoga that turns your selfish actions into selfless actions. Actions born of egoism versus actions that are free of egoism. The big difference there. Second level, Anahata chakra, Icha Shakti. Icha Shakti means now we are steadying our water. We are controlling our water. And this is done by Raja Yoga, meditation, and Bhakti Yoga, devotion. Yoga of turning your positive feelings sublime feelings, divine feelings, the yoga of turning emotion into devotion. That calms your heart, my dear brothers and sisters. Our hearts are being pulled in many different directions by impure desires. So, Bhakti Yoga will purify that distracted desire, impure desire, into devotion. Devotion must be there. Faith must be there. Bhakti. And Raja, meditation. Devotion will make your meditation practice more successful, and your meditation practice will lead to greater success in devotion practice, cultivating more power. Faith moves mountains. That's where that phrase comes from. It comes from Hanuman, by the way. Faith moves mountains. And Raja Yoga. So this is now calming the water, stilling the water. Now what is left? That reflected sun in the jar of water has now clean water and calm water, and it will realize who it is when the veil of ignorance is lifted. There's an illusion, there's a veil that is causing the mind, it's causing the mind to look into the jar and into the water and into the reflected sun for its satisfaction and for its attainment of spirituality and happiness. It's looking in the wrong place. That's what the veil of ignorance causes us to do. Even while we want to attain God realization, even while we want to sublimate and negate the ego is tricking us at the same time. It is acting and working against us at the same time. That is called avarana. That's called illusion, veil of illusion. So first, impurities in the water, right? Impurities cleaned by karma yoga. Second, distractions, vikshepa, waves, turbulence, calmed and controlled by bhakti yoga and raja yoga. Yoga of emotion and yoga of meditation. Veil of ignorance, avarana, is lifted by jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of turning your intellect into intuition, the yoga of wisdom. And it is this wisdom that is necessary for the last level, jnana shakti. We had kriya shakti, actions, ichcha shakti, desires, thoughts, and jnana shakti is your understanding. Do you understand? Who am I? What is my purpose? And what is my goal? And if you do not understand those three questions, or if you do not understand what is the Atman, what is Brahman, what is the nature of this world and this reality, if I do not understand yoga, if ignorance is the problem, knowledge is the solution. Knowledge will remove that ignorance, thinking that the reflected sun, I am this little reflected sun in this jar. And then the next jar I get, I'm again this reflected sun limited in this jar, having a limited experience and a limited experience and a limited experience, never realizing you are the sun, and the sun has been shining forever. The sun was always free and unaffected by all of the illusions and ignorance and impurities of the jar and of the water and the ignorance of that reflected sun. Jar is the body, water is the mind, reflected sun is your soul. And all three levels are necessary. All four yogas are necessary. Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, and jnana yoga, for that reflected sun to realize, I am the sun. I am the light of all lights. I am the ever-shining Atman, beyond birth and beyond death. Existence, consciousness, bliss. That am I. And with this, we'll conclude. Special prayer on auspicious and sacred occasion of Diwali. May all develop Shakti, spiritual strength, to overcome obstacles, to resist temptation, to remove impurities, requires Shakti, strength. May you be blessed with unbounded bhakti, boundless devotion, ever surmounting faith, which removes all doubts. And may you have the ultimate blessing and ultimate attainment of mukti, liberation, freedom, enlightenment. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityurmukshiyamamritat. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu Ma Kaschit Dukhabhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Ma Mritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.